Hi, this is Sylvaine, and we are here to talk about one of my favorite bands today, which is Type O Negative.
And Sylvain, just so that that I'm clear with you and everybody watching this video, usually in this series, I keep that as a surprise to myself to make it a bit of a challenge that I don't know what band we're going to talk about. But in this case, you did check with me because let's be honest, if we were to talk about your absolute favorite artists, we would not be in the metal world altogether. We would be in, for a Belgian living in Canada, somewhat obscure Norwegian folk artists. So let's give you a few seconds there anyway. So what is it about your favorite Norwegian folk artists that we don't know about in the world and we should know about?
Well, I mean, it's really not for me to say that you should know about it, but as a Norwegian, it's something that I've grown up with. Obviously, every country has their own kind of tradition in art in general, be it visual or music. And the Norwegian folk music is quite a strong tradition in our country, and it has a quite specific sound and specific melodies. And well, one of the artists that I've discovered through the title track, actually, of my new EP called Eg Er Framand, is basically the Norwegian artist called Arve Moen Bergseth. And he has been he released music like from a very young age, and he was playing both like this instrument that in Norwegian is called hardingfele, which is a sort of violin, but it has like double sets of strings. So it's a bit of a specific, again, Norwegian folk specific instrument. And what I like about what he has done in the folk music and like the imprint he's left is that I think it's a nice mixture of the kind of heritage of folk music that was very often very stripped down and very like not, how can you say, polished or fancy at all. It was music that was very often used with a purpose, you know, like to communicate with other people across the mountain or with animals or stuff like that, or to entertain at like a evening in the barn, you know, like that kind of thing. So in this case, with his music, the record that I really love by him is actually religious folk music, which is obviously a whole different thing. Purpose is used in religious context, in churches, stuff like that. And I just love that he has this mixture of like staying true to that very stripped down, very raw kind of origin of this genre, so to speak, this tradition. But at the same time has a very nice way of producing it to make it sound kind of timeless. And he started out when he was really young, and then he kind of grew with it, and he kept recording as he grew up. Like it has his range, for example, in his voice, and like the diversity throughout his records is really, really interesting. So yeah, definitely. I don't know if it's because it's something I've grown up with, and that's why these melodies really touch me, or if it's something that can universally be understood, which is something I'm going to find out with my EP, I guess. But beyond the boundaries of like Norway and Sweden. But yeah, this is something that speaks to me a lot, and I just love this idea of not messing with it too much, keeping it very organic, very like true to like if I was standing in a room singing to you, you know, that kind of feeling, which can be very intimate, I guess.
And a lot of that music, and we'll get to that on the EP, but also the music that has inspired you comes with its fair share of melancholia as well, which maybe then it's also not a surprise that you as an artist who is known for melancholic, folky post-metal goes to one of the most depressing bands in metal that were nicknamed the Drab Four, and everything was very, very dark and heavy, especially for its time. Let's go into Type O Negative and its influence on you as an artist and your journey. But let's start at the start, because this is a band that was formed in the very late 80s, early 90s, came out first recordings. So I'm going to assume that you got to know them a little bit later than that.
Yes. It wasn't like in utero. No, it wasn't like that. Yeah, no, actually, I got into, like, I always say this, like, I got into heavier kind of music kind of late, like, and especially like the heavier metal and black metal style. It was really late compared to most of my friends. But Typo Negative was kind of like the shift in a way. It was like one of those bands that were a shift into something that was like really dark compared to others. I mean, it came from like my favorite band when I was a kid growing up was like Aerosmith. So going from that to Typo Negative was kind of a big jump. So, but in between there was other things that happened. And yeah, basically I discovered Typo Negative back when I was, I don't know, in my mid-teenage years, something like that. I can't remember what led me to them though. That's the thing. I have a feeling that it was this Finnish band called Him that I also liked for a moment in time very much. And I think, if I'm not wrong, I think they were the ones that led me to Typo initially. And then I kind of kept coming back to it over the years. And then it became like a thing that just was a real thing for me as an artist. So I think I might have been like 16, 17 maybe when I first discovered it.
Okay.
I just have this memory of like of buying the records and like shortly after Peter passing away, you know, and then being really upset, of course. I mean, upset because, you know, it's never nice when some people move on to the next plane. But yeah, when you get really into something and then it's like, oh, okay, goodbye, I guess I'll never see that live. I remember quite a blow. So, but yeah, anyways, it was quite late for me. Opened the doors to so many things. Like if it wouldn't have been for Typo, I wouldn't have been as exposed to the whole world of like dream pop and shoegaze and like, you know, dark wave, all this kind of stuff that I also to some of it I was like getting like Dead Can Dance, for example, I was already into when I met Typo, but stuff like Cocktail Twins, for example, or Lush, Lycia, things like this, like that I hadn't really listened to as much, was kind of thanks to them. So they meant like so much to me as an artist, actually. Opened the doors to many things.
So throughout this conversation, we want to kind of, you know, anchor that around 3 specific songs that for you stand out. And I mean, this is a band that had quite a few albums. They were very productive in a short amount of time. One of the leading bands of the late 90s, for sure, mid to late 90s. Where on this discovery, because you basically discovered the band when they were almost finished, or even fully finished, where do we find your first pick?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of like, I feel like I discovered them with, I think the first song I heard was "I Don't Want to Be Me," which is like not the representative song at all for them. But I love this song, of course. Everyone loves the song. It's a great song. And from there, you know, like getting into discography, and of course, "Love You to Death" was one of those songs that immediately stood out. It's like their biggest songs for a reason. It's just, I remember listening to that and going just, whoa, hang on a minute. Wait a second. What is this? I'll make to serve your wishes, my love. It's so heavy, it's so dark, but it's like incredibly atmospheric and lush. It's so many opposing things in this music that kind of don't make sense, but they make so much sense together. And I think that was the one that really hooked me, because I remember listening to Typo a little bit, and the first time I listened to it, it didn't quite like grab me right away. And then I kept coming back to it, and then I was like, at some point I was just like, wait a minute. And I wonder if that might have been like through October Rusts, basically, which is still it's hard to choose a favorite record, but October Rusts is, for me, it's like a masterpiece. Like it's hard for me to choose my favorites on this record. It's hard for me to choose 3 songs in general from their catalog to speak about, but I have to include "Love You to Death," even if it's like kind of a cliche one to choose, because I honestly believe this song is like, it's perfect. It's just gorgeous. So obviously I didn't discover it in the mid 90s when they released October.
Right. Yes.
But like later on, and that was the one that really like slapped me in the face and went like, oh, wait a minute. It's like I've always been attracted to like things that where you mix like, you know, light and dark, and you mix different kind of expressions in music. But that was the first time I think I heard it kind of pull to that extent, that extreme.
Yeah. Yes, it's one of their most famous songs. It's one of their most, you know, it's a hit song for them. And it's a good example for Typo. That was a band that you rightfully say, like, they were so heavy and it was so dark, for a band with such mainstream appeal, because they were on MTV. They were selling out massive venues all over. I think you said briefly, like, you never really got to see them live.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's very unfortunate. Yeah, I got to see them once only, I think, at Grass Pop 2003 or something like that. But they were headlining the tent at that year. But they were a popular band, and for a popular band so heavy, and that song particularly is a very catchy side of them, and it's a mainstream side of them. Did those songs, those hits, teach you the importance of balance in music, that music can be heavy and catchy at the same time? Do you see that kind of song influenced your own writing?
I think so, yeah. Like, for me, I've always been very melody driven as a composer. I mean, even just as a listener of music, which sounds kind of a little bit like weird to say, like, I'm melody driven. Yeah, who doesn't listen to melodies? But I don't know, I've just always been very focused on that. And I do very much appreciate hooks. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, the traditional pop hook in a song, or it could be as well, because I like pop music as well. But something that's like really just like, after the first time you hear it, you can still sing it. I think, like I already said, like this band, the Finnish band, they definitely had a lot of that, maybe too much actually for that on their side. But Type O Negative for me was like the perfect mix of, some things are really obscure and very specific in their catalog, and a lot of things are kind of open to interpretation from people from multiple different audiences across the board, you know, like from different parts of life. So definitely, I think it's made an example of how to do that, how to make something that's like, you know, I was just like listening these days, I've been listening quite a bit to World Coming Down, which is not exactly their most famous record, actually. Although it was the first one to get into the Billboard 200s, I think, of their catalog. But still, like in their catalog, it's not the one that's spoken about the most. But I'm just thinking about like how incredibly like doomy this is, and like the fact that it became so mainstream. Even Love You to Death is quite doomy, you know, like it's very on one side, but it's also very doomy. So yeah, they made like an example for me of like, this is how you can take something that's quite niche, but you can make it your version of mainstream, and it actually appeals to a lot of people. So absolutely, I think that's something that, like I said, as a listener myself, I really like the balance between opposites in music, and that for me was strong. And like I said, kind of like a whoa, how can you do it that well? And like people really respond to it as well. And I mean, I think they were just being honestly totally authentic to themselves. They weren't like trying to, you know, in a very, what can I say, cynical way trying to do this. No, I think it was just like their sound, and that's what they wanted it to be, and it worked so well. So absolutely.
You mentioned that 1999 album, World Coming Down. Do we find song number 2 on that album?
We do, and I went back and forth actually with this one, because as I already told you, for me it's like really hard to choose 3 songs because it changes which songs are my favorite. And like just today I was like, I should have like talked about Creepy Green Light, because that song is so amazing. But no, yeah, I wanted to talk about World Coming Down, the title track from that record actually. I think this album is a little bit underrated because it takes away a little bit of that humor aspect. Type O Negative used a lot, like the kind of tongue-in-cheek humor, the kind of bit of the sexual humor as well that they have used a lot, like on Bloody Kisses and October Rust, you know. But Slow, Deep and Hard, of course, as well. But World Coming Down was like a really dark album that was very much, from what I remember, was very much related to Peter having lost like multiple different important people in his life in that period of time. And there was also some drug abuse, cocaine, I believe, stuff like that. That was, it wasn't the best moment, I guess, is basically the short way to put it. And you can really feel it in the album. Like, I feel like it's a really dark album. It's an album that I can't always listen to, personally.
Yeah.
But I still, like, with World Coming Down, the title track, I just love how incredibly lush the sound is. It's so lush and it's so slow and doomy. And then it also, I love how they mix up different parts of the songs. Like with World Coming Down, just all of a sudden it just changes to something else. And you're like, is it the same track? And you check, it's like, yeah, it's the same track. So it's a really, really good, I think it's a great song. It's actually hard to choose a song from that album because there's a lot of good ones there as well. Like, Everything Dies is another one that's really, really good. Like, right. But World Coming Down is definitely, it's a dark one, but it still has that like shimmer of light sprinkled on top to kind of outline the melancholy and the pain that's really present in this record.
Yeah. Type O Negative was also a band that in like the very still macho 90s were not afraid to, in their own unique way, be extremely vulnerable and address some of these topics that very few rock stars did before them, or at least, very popular, heavy metal rock stars, which is something that, you've always done as well. Your last full-length album, Nova, was, I think, a massive step towards more personal vulnerability for you. And now you are also, from a musical perspective, on your new EP, you're stripping away the band, if you will. And we obviously, I know your band personally and they're fun guys, but you're going to be very much solo right now. How easy or hard did that come for you? I know we've talked about this briefly in the past, but to embrace that vulnerability for you as you're creating, like seeing or growing up with a band that is so unapologetically vulnerable, does that give you, the little green girl, the possibility to or the more energy or more comfort to do that as well?
I suppose so. Like, I think maybe sometimes we don't like to admit how much stuff like that influences us, especially kind of from the millennial generation and on. We like to be so woke and so correct about everything and like, so aware and open and everything. But of course, I think it helped that people that were older to us and that we looked up to at some points kind of, went ahead and were like, yeah, it's really okay. Like, if you want to make a album about your dead cats, like, and how hard it was to lose them, go for it, That's, even if you're like a 2 meter something tall giant that everyone thinks is like this burly guy. So yeah, of course. I think it's something that also drew me to their music is because there's definitely that, like, of course, like I said, you have like the humor side, which you don't have in mine. The humor side that kind of was maybe a little bit still of that like macho 90s, as you said, but underneath all that there was definitely a super vulnerable thing going on. And for me, when I started making music, I felt like there was kind of, I did other bands and stuff before where I didn't feel like my most personal feelings kind of belonged, because I didn't feel like I want to force them on anyone. It didn't feel kind of right to try to channel them through people that might not agree or might not, I don't know, have the tools to communicate it in the same way because they haven't lived these things. So from the moment I wanted to make Sylvaine back in 2013, basically, there was no question. Like, I need to be vulnerable and I need to not be afraid of like letting the shields down, like breaking it down and letting people see who I am. And it's funny because sometimes I talk about that with other artists, how like it is with fans, like sometimes fans feel like they know you because you've literally shared the most personal thing you can with them.
Yeah.
They totally don't know you as an actual human being, but they still have like your deepest, darkest secrets, So yeah, it's absolutely, it's kind of like a strange thing, but I've had the questions several times before, like, are you afraid to be too personal or too vulnerable in your music? I find that the more I dig into that, the more interesting it gets, and the more, or the easier it is to stay authentic about who you are and what you're trying to communicate to the world. That's why I'm like, my new EP, like I've never done that before, where I released a track that's literally just one voice in a church. And the thought was that I want the listener to be able to close their eyes and imagine as if they were in the same room as me, sitting in that church with me, just listening to this message that I have for them. And it's definitely scary. It's really scary to look there. And like with this EP, I was very afraid to kind of see how people would react, because it's like, I know that not everyone will feel connected to a 5.5 minute long a cappella piece with just one voice. I mean, that's maybe a bit too much long of an attention span for most people to deal with that. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel this is what my heart and my soul is asking for at this moment in time.
What you say now, it sparks a question, and it's also like the clear link with type O negative. And it might be a good question, it might be a really stupid question. So I'll let you be the judge, and we'll see how we go. But one thing that Peter, unfortunately, what he said himself, because he wasn't really too happy with it afterwards, is going to be known for is a certain photo shoot in Playgirl magazine. Just drawing the link to Sylvaine, what you just said, you went very vulnerable on the cover artwork for your last album, where you had a nude photo shoot. For you, literally stripping down for a photo like that, or stripping your music down for an a cappella song like this, what's more scary?
Ooh, that's a good question, actually. They're scary in different ways. Stripping yourself down to just like an a cappella song, if someone criticizes it, they're literally directly criticizing you.
Right.
Because you are the instruments in an a cappella piece where you just have vocals. So even if I know that that's not how usually what people, that's not the way that they mean it, but if there's something wrong with it, technically they're saying indirectly it's something wrong with you in that moment.
Yeah.
So it can be very hard to deal with. Like, I think every artist can really do well with constructive criticism, but I think we're also very, can be kind of bad at taking it, because it's something so personal that it can be very overwhelming in the moment that it happens. So in that sense, it's quite scary with that kind of stripping down the music to the bare bones. Like, you can't get it more stripped down than just one voice.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when I did, it's funny, I never questioned the cover of Nova. I had the vision, and as soon as it came into my mind, I was like, that's what needs to happen. How can I make that happen? Became the question, not if I should do it. But of course, when I sat there with the finished piece, for me, it was like, because of the story behind it and everything that I was doing with, I felt like it was so, I mean, it sounds so weird to say that about a picture about yourself, but I thought it was so beautiful. Like, it was just like everything that I wanted to embody with this album, in this one image. And I was like, you could see me dying, but you can also see me rising again. It's like, it's everything I want. But of course, after the fact, I was worried that some people would sexualize it, which definitely happened. Like, not gonna lie, there was also like several instances where social media wanted to try to censor the image, which I found, because you don't actually see any of the parts that should be censored normally, but still. So it's hard to say. And I mean, it's also, self-image is also a thing that's difficult for every single one of us out there. And I will say, actually, if I'm being honest, and I haven't told that to anyone before except for friends, that this photo shoot messed with me a little bit mentally afterwards. Like, I saw my body a little bit different after this photo shoot, because I got so up close with it, in a sense, both during the shoot and also like afterwards, having to look through all the photos and pick things and picking stuff to retouch. It messed with my mind a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it lays you bare for yourself as well. So that aspect was definitely maybe a little bit more difficult, which is kind of behind the scenes. Nobody really sees that happen.
Right.
And of course, the worry that people might sexualize it. But then I've quickly realized that that's their issue, actually, not mine.
Right. Yeah,
so they're both scary in different ways, but also both something that I just need to do. So I just keep following what my gut tells me.
So we have time for one more song. The third pick, the final pick. This better be good, Kathrine.
It's my favorite Type O Negative song. So no matter when someone asks me about Type O Negative, Anesthesia from Life is Killing Me is always going to be the song I mentioned. Life is Killing Me is probably, it's hard to say my favorite record because I really love October Rust and We're All Coming Down and Bloody Kisses and all the run-ups. But I don't know, there's something special. Like I said, my first interaction with Type O was with this record, and also this song. Just this song for me is really truly a masterpiece from the beginning to the very end. The sound landscapes, the choices of like keyboard sounds, of course the sound, like the very like chorusy sound of both the bass and the guitar, the simplistic drums but super efficient, the lyrics, of course, the kind of interesting samples, like there's a saw kind of sound in there. The breaks, the way it builds, oh my god, the organ at the end when it's like building up and Peter's like screaming, and oh my god, it's just, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this song. I just love this song to bits. Like it's every time someone asks me about it, to death. I do. I truly do. Thank you, Jasper, for setting me up there. But yeah, basically is one of my all-time favorite songs, and it's really hard to choose that, but Anesthesia will forever and always be on that list because even now when I listen, it also makes me emotional after so many years, and that's why I wanted to try to play it myself, and I have played it live twice, I think, and I do intend to do it again in the future because I was terrified to do it, of course, because I didn't want to like desecrate something that I love so much. But I had to make it my own stripped down version, and I don't know, this song just has something, the lyrics too, like the meaning behind it is just like wow. It's just masterpiece.
You are going to go on the road by yourself. I mean, not by yourself, you're doing this with other people as well, but your set will be just yourself. I think it's a European run that has been announced. What can we expect from that?
Well, it's my first time touring I always say that as a solo artist. It's like, well, I am a solo artist, but you know, on stage I have my three guys with me, my family on stage, basically, that allows me to channel my music live. But the last few years, it's been a long time coming actually, but the last few years I really insisted on getting into this solo thing a bit more, and I haven't done many shows like that yet. But every time I've done that, it's been something like really wow. Like it took me really interesting places, and I could feel that the audience were really moved by it as well. So, it felt like it at the moment. So I told my booking agent that I would really like to continue in this vein, and not to replace the band at all, but just to do it in addition, because it's two different kinds of catharsis from a personal level, and also more importantly for the audience, it's a more direct communication from me to them when I'm alone. So what you can expect, it's a very intimate and very emotional set. Like I'm a very sentimental person to begin with in everyday life, and on stage alone like that, I tend to just let it rip. Whatever happens during those sets. But I can definitely promise that it will be something special, and it will be something very 100% honest, and just I wish to make people feel, I guess.
There you go. Is it too soon to joke about getting better locks for your van on that tour, or
maybe? Well, you know, maybe a little soon. It's okay. Like, again, because of our wonderful fans and all the fellow bands, our fellow like co-workers and friends, we managed to get out of that situation in a pretty darn good way, and we're incredibly grateful for all the help we got. So yeah, sure, you can joke about that. Let's get new locks.
Let's get new locks. Kathrine, Sylvaine, Kathrine. One doesn't stop where the other begin. Thank you so much for yet again talking to me. You're quite regular now on the program, and I always appreciate it. Thank you for being so open and honest with me, and opening the door beyond your own vulnerable music, but showing everybody like what are those influences that shape you as an artist. That's really cool. Thank you so much for being part of the series, and I'll keep my fingers crossed to see you on a stage, whether that's with your guys or solo in 2024. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me again, Jasper. It's always a pleasure, and this time was no exception. Thank you so much.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.